Country roads, take me home to the place I belong.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this video for a while because Bethesda have only recently been facing negative press following the release of Fallout 76, but the telltale signs of a company in decline have been there for a while. So the content of this video is going to be quite critical of Bethesda, and I just want to clarify that the criticism isn't owed to me disliking Bethesda. I mean, EA and their loot box bullshit aside, I don't want to see a company fail or release shit games. I'm criticising Bethesda because they have once been a champion of single-player games, releasing industry-defining games like Morrowind, but now they release games like Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, and I'm criticising them because they're industry-leading AAA developers and they should be doing fucking better. Okay, so let's talk about Bethesda. Over the years, there are many things that have contributed towards Bethesda's recent conveyance of an attitude that shows that they just don't give a fuck anymore. And one of those is definitely that they are given a free ride in the press where others are rightly criticised. One of those factors is that their games are given universal praise, absent the same criticism that is levelled at other developers' games. My perspective on Bethesda games come from growing up during a golden era of JRPGs and CRPGs. I played games like Final Fantasy VII and X or Baldur's Gate and Diablo, all games with great stories or deep gameplay mechanics with a longevity that was owed to its quality rather than the ease with which it can be modded. So I don't enjoy the experience offered by recent Bethesda releases for the same reason that I wouldn't jump headfirst into a paddling pool, because it's too fucking shallow. In those games that I played growing up, they've all been exceeded in terms of quality and excellence by The Witcher 3, with its achievements in world building, branching dialogue systems, character development, and just overall quality becoming all the more impressive as the years pass and the industry continues in its failure to match or surpass it. And I mentioned The Witcher 3 not because it's my favourite game, but because it was released before Fallout 4, but in the same year. So expectations of what a truly great game should be achieving really ought to have been reformulated by the time that Fallout 4 was released, but this wasn't reflected in the reviews at all. Fallout 4 is, for want of a better phrase, just embarrassingly inferior to CD Projekt Red's game. The dialogue system is stripped back, which removes any semblance of player agency as the game just forces you into the same outcome. The character creation suite is impressive, but it has no impact on the game as you're pretty much directed into playing what is clearly Bethesda's preferred tank-like style. Diamond City, the largest settlement on the map, has about 40 NPCs, all of whom seem completely oblivious to the world's going on. And that is most salient in the innovative settlement system, whereby NPCs just lack awareness of the settlements that you've established, and it has no impact on the economy either, despite the ability to set up trade routes. And when you compare these to 2015 entries like Bloodborne and The Witcher 3, it really begins to feel like a game with only superficial depth. And as I mentioned, this is where Bethesda start to get an easier ride than most developers in the press. Fallout 4 is just not on the same level as its 2015 peers. However, Metacritic would suggest that the game is only marginally behind these games, with influencers such as IGN inexplicably awarding the game a higher score than both. And I'm picking on IGN there just mostly because of the fucking absurdity of the review process. They actually praised the dialogue system in Fallout 4 despite it being stripped back from previous entries and appearing clunky and giving you no agency, and the story is flat and just the opposite of Fallout 3, where rather than being a son looking for his kidnapped father, you are now a father looking for his kidnapped son. And this is pretty common though, with outlets keen to praise Bethesda games whilst omitting the criticism that they would rightly level at other games. This is pretty evident in 2011 with the release of Skyrim, two games that released that year, Ninja Gaiden and Fable 3. They were heavily criticised by IGN for the banality of their stories and the dearth of their combat systems. And having played both, they are fair criticisms, but they're ones that can absolutely be levelled at Skyrim. I mean, the combat system in Skyrim is pretty bare bones, and the story is very derivative of the genre. And again, while the map is interactive, it feels very dull and lifeless. And look, I'm not calling Skyrim a bad game, it's just a mediocre game. And while it was an important game, a game's importance isn't necessarily an indication of its quality. You just need to look at Shenmue for that. But beyond the game's story and the mission structure and the world, I mean, the game was released in a pretty terrible state. And before I move on to Bethesda's love for bugs and glitches, I just want to point out that glitches and bugs, they are inevitable in large-scale open-world games. It's just unreasonable to expect that QA can pick them up before release. As gamers, when we buy a game in the first year of its release, we understand that bugs are going to be present for the first year, but we buy them on the understanding that developers are going to eliminate these bugs as they are reported by the player base. And developers sell these games accepting that as their responsibility. As an example, The Witcher 3 was patched heavily upon its PC release, as was Ubisoft's Rainbow Six Siege, or The Division, Assassin's Creed, or, well, any Ubisoft game that's been released. However, the issue that I take with Bethesda games isn't that the games have bugs like others do, it's the sheer prevalence of them and their utter refusal to fix them. I think the best example of this is Skyrim. By 2018, Skyrim has been released on everything but a fucking rock. The game has been rightfully praised during its re-releases for the stunning lighting and foliage upgrades. However, the problem with the Skyrim re-releases is that they've essentially kept the core game and released it with the same bugs that were present in fucking November 2011. Reading further into it for the purpose of this video, there's absolutely no shortage of reports on Reddit or game FAQs regarding the severity of file corruption, glitches and persistent freezing, which has resulted in quite a lot of people having to re-download the game or restart the game. And these bugs and these glitches that have been found in the game, some of them are day one glitches. And if you bought this on the Nintendo Switch, it was a £60 game. It's not as though the bastards haven't had 7 fucking years to fix it. But again, the game was released to pretty much widespread praise, and all comments on the glitches and the bugs that can be found in the game was pretty much pushed to the side. But for some reason, when Bethesda release a game, these game-breaking, experience-ruining bugs, they aren't hated. Rather than rightly loathing them, people actually describe these game-breaking, system-crashing bugs as quirks or features in what is some form of fucked-up consumerist Stockholm Syndrome. To put this into perspective, crashes and game-breaking bugs weren't a fucking quirk of Kingdom Come Deliverance. It wasn't quirky when Rocksteady had to cease the sales of the PC port of Arkham Knight due to its shit state. It wasn't a feature of No Man's Sky when its multiplayer was absent. And it certainly wasn't a fucking feature of Battlefront 2 when you got stuck in a wall or found yourself flying above the fucking battlefield. Somehow, Bethesda have normalised the notion that shipping a broken product is okay. I mean, imagine buying a table from IKEA that collapsed every third or fourth time you put a mug of coffee on it. That's a fucking Bethesda game. And yet, there was actual palpable surprise in November when Bethesda hit peak Bethesda with the release of the shambolic Fallout 76. When you play through Fallout 4, there's no shortage of radio quests, which are just generic fetch quests. Yet somehow there was surprise that the content in Fallout 76 was shallow, shit and dull. I mean, IGN even lamented the torrid state of that game. I can only surmise that their rose-tinted glasses have finally broken. I mean, justifiably so. The narrative is being somewhat solemn because this is a big developer finally announcing to the world that it actually doesn't give a fuck. And I think in a lot of the coverage, this surprise has manifested as disbelief, with quite a lot of coverage centering around the fact that somewhere buried deep within the broken shell of a game, there might actually be a great game. But even if that's the case, that's not okay. I played Rust 3 years ago, and that was in a better state then than Fallout 76 is now. And Rust isn't a £60 game. For £60, the game should be great now. I mean, that last point might be a little bit moot given that I just seen it for £15 today. The game has just been the commercial, critical and PR disaster that Bethesda have been hurtling towards for years now. But not content with shipping one of the worst games of the generation, they have doubled down on their bastard ways and dealt with complaints and an embarrassing contempt for customers. And their stance, on PC at least, has been facilitated by opting for platform exclusivity on their fledgling BethesdaNet client. And this move to their client is something that they've been working towards since 2015, really, since the paid mods fiasco came about. And the use of their own client, it's not something that I begrudge them. I'm all for companies using their own launch clients. I mean, sure, it's a pain in the arse having so many launch clients on the computer, but at the end of the day, it gives the company 100% of the purchase fee for the game that they have made, but it also reduces the monopoly that Steam has on the PC market, and that's got to be good for everyone. But also, I'm principally for customer choice, and in rejecting alternative platforms, they've removed customer choice, and it's a decision that hasn't reflected well on them, and it's one that's just fucked over their player base. Firstly, unsurprisingly, BethesdaNet is a bug-infested, feature-incomplete mess, I mean, it's already had a critical issue in the client during beta testing that deleted the game. I mean, it's a 50GB game, and I'm pretty sure that it's had more downtime already than PSN has had over the last year. And therein lies the problem, really. Bethesda don't have any expectations to meet. And I mean, these sort of issues would be at least understandable if they had given customers the choice of where they can buy the game. And saying that it's available on console as well is not really an option, because people wanting to play on PC probably aren't wanting to play it on fucking console. But the problem is that Bethesda don't really have any expectations to meet. The burden of expectation is only on the customer. I mean, you have to maintain an internet connection, you have to buy the game on their client or you don't play it at all, you have to accept that they're going to cock up occasionally, and you just have to accept their dogmatic returns policy. They, however, can pretty much do whatever the fuck they want, and you have to accept it because you're using their client. And Bethesda doing what they want is not particularly great. You just have to look at the returns policy that they've implemented in Fallout 76. They did initially plan to refund Fallout 76 following its broken ass state, but they kind of reneged on that when they realised that the vast majority of the people that had bought it probably wanted to refund it. They've kind of hidden themselves behind their EULAs, the terms of their sales, and utilising really antiquated digital sales legislation to reject refunds by anyone that's downloaded the game files. It doesn't matter if you've actually spent any time in the fucking game, just if you've downloaded the files, you do not get a refund. I mean, Steam are arseholes, but at least you can play the game for 2 hours before you refund it after you find out what sort of state the game's in. And lastly, I want to give an honourable mention to the Creation Club. In of itself, the Creation Club's not a bad idea. It could have given console gamers the same sort of longevity from the games that they own that PC gamers have been enjoying for years, and it also could have gave PC gamers who are less tech savvy or more apprehensive about modding the confidence to mod without fear of their save file corrupting. And it would have been better as well if they'd have just offered this sort of subscription based service so that modders could have got a fee for the mods that they've created, which they do deserve, and customers wouldn't have been fucked over by what is quite honestly one of the most seedy monetization systems that you can implement. Rather than allowing players to, exchange money for something that they want, they have gone for a sleazy free-to-play mobile economy. Players buy coins, as you do say in Pokemon Go, which you then spend on the store. But the system that they have in place, it's not there to protect customers, it's there just to hide the true value of what it is that you're paying for. And by the way, what you're paying for is almost unilaterally shit on that site. And the purchase options are designed in such a way that anything that you purchase, you will always be left with a little bit of money. It's just a little niggle that makes you feel like you should spend again to get rid of the coin. But you can't, that's the fucking catch. And that little psychological niggle that they have there, it's every way as insidious as the dopamine triggering loot box animations that you can see in the games that implement them. But what pisses me off about it is that they wouldn't need to implement psychologically manipulative monetization systems if what they offered was of any fucking value. But it's not, it's just shit, like backpacks or weapon skins. And I think this declaration that Bethesda made that they don't give a single solitary fuck about you wasn't really given a lot of coverage when the Creation Club was announced and released, but again, I think that it ties further into the way that developers and publishers monetize games, and that really is a topic in of itself. So I've covered quite a lot here, and Bethesda are a strange company. They seem relatively invulnerable to negative press, and I think that when they release their next couple of games, that will prove to be the case again. Starfield and The Elder Scrolls 6, they're going to be released in a broken state, and there's still going to be surprised that this happened in spite of the warning signs that have been there now for years. And it becomes just a little bit unforgivable when you look at the state of games that were released in recent years that had ambitions that far exceeded those of the games that Bethesda will release. Games such as The Witcher 3 or more recently Red Dead Redemption 2. They were all released in a state of polish that a Bethesda game probably will never see. And it's because they know that they're going to get away with releasing broken games, and the lack of negative coverage serves no other purpose than to embolden them in releasing these games. They're the beneficiaries of the AAA effect, whereby reviewers give them a higher score just because they're a AAA developer and they deign to release a game. Whereas games that are released by lower developers, they are criticised for the things that Bethesda fail in that really they should be picked up on. And I'm not saying that these smaller developers should be forgiven in their failures, I'm just saying that Bethesda are a AAA developer, which means they have a higher budget, and they should be held to a different standard, but a higher standard, not a fucking lower one. And beyond the quality of the games, they have employed frankly EA level bullshittery. I mean, replace Bethesda with EA, Activision, fucking Blizzard or Ubisoft, and you would have a issue that on the scale of the Shadow of War release. But so long as they continue to support mods in their game and continue to demonstrate self-awareness of the memes that people create about their games, then they just get an oh boy, whereas for other companies they get pitchforks. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Bethesda positioned themselves as a beacon of light in the industry, you know, championing the save single-player game movement. But realistically, when you look at them objectively, you put them up there with EA in terms of examples of why the industry actually needs to be regulated. And I'm not saying this because I really want the games industry to be regulated, and I'm not saying this because I want Bethesda to fail, I want them to do better. And I really hope that over the next few months, when the dust is settled on this Fallout 76 debacle, and they look back at the successes of games like God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2, Bloodborne and The Witcher, and know that they are now the standards that they need to meet. I really hope that they have learned something, but until I see that, I remain heavily fucking skeptical. Yeah, I would like to know what you think. Do you think that this is something that Bethesda have been hurtling towards for a while, or do you think that this is sort of new behaviour for the company? Hope to see you in the comments. And yeah, thank you for listening to that. If you liked the video, please press subscribe. Check out my Patreon link down below.